Welcome to Career Choices. I'm your host, Elizabeth Gia. This program is where you'll meet accomplished people sharing their background, experience, and career path. Today's guest, Mr. Joe Mornini, is an environmentalist and adventurer. He holds a master's degree in environmental education from Goddard College in Vermont. For more than 4 decades, Mr. Mornini has been involved in outdoor ed. A few years ago, Mr. Mornini retired from Montgomery County Public Schools as a teacher and a program coordinator in special ed. In 2004, he co-founded Team River Runner, a nonprofit organization dedicated to teaching wounded veterans how to kayak. Hi, Mr. Mornini.
Hi, how are you today?
Good. I'm very excited to have you. Thank you so much for being here.
I appreciate the opportunity.
So I wanted to just first dive into the start of your career. Your master's degree is in environmental education. Why did you choose that field?
I like being outside. I'd much rather be outside than under a roof. And I found that out when I was very young, playing sports and just being outdoors. And I looked for a career or a path that would allow me to do something outside and spend time doing some adventures.
That sounds really fun.
It was fun. It's always been fun.
So in Montgomery County Public Schools has an environmental outdoor education path. So how does that relate to what you're doing in terms of the dedicated to outdoor ed for more than 4 decades? Meaning, explain exactly what is environmental outdoor education.
Well, if you take in environmental education, outdoor education, adventure sports, outdoors, they all kind of overlap with each other with, the love of the outdoors, the love of adventure. The program you're talking about is called the Smith Center. It's in Rockville, Maryland. And I actually worked there for a year. But before that, I began my career as a volunteer for Montgomery County Hotline. It was at that time, and there still is a crisis line in Montgomery County, but that was the original crisis line, started way back by the Mental Health Association of Montgomery County.
Nice.
And when I was 18 years old, I left school for the first time and started volunteering there. And from that, I began to volunteer for their youth service center that they had in Wheaton, Maryland, where I grew up. And we found that the at-risk youth that we were working with, or the young people that we were working with, liked adventure sports too. So we started doing outdoor education with them and taking them backpacking or climbing or taking them out to the Smith Center and hiking and seeing some of the stuff that was going on there in outdoor education.
So after you finished school at 18, it seemed like you worked with these groups of people who were of the same age as you?
Well, they were a little younger.
Okay.
So I had graduated from high school and I was still searching for what I wanted to do with a career. I knew I wanted to do something out of doors and something different. And I just kind of fell into the hotline volunteer work and just kind of leapfrogged into different opportunities for me. The young people I was working with were generally in middle school or early high school, and over several years of working with the Mental Health Association, I kind of outgrew them being peers, and they became young people. But I always considered them just other young people who we were trying to work with.
When you were working with these young people, what kinds of activities you said you led were environmental in nature, and then what are there other components to it?
Well, we did a lot of talking, a lot of sports.
Okay.
We'd have a drop-in center. We called it Middle Earth.
Okay.
And the kids would come there in the evenings. But then from that, we would take field trips to Shenandoah National Park to go hiking or to go backpacking or to Carter Rock to go climbing.
Oh, I like Carter Rock.
Yeah, so we did a lot of different activities in the Montgomery County area, going out to the Smith Center and hiking at Lake Frank. Or going around to Lake Needwood. We did some canoeing.
Nice.
At that time I was not a boater. I wasn't kayaking then.
Okay.
We just looked for different outdoor activities that we knew would be safe, but at the same time give them a little bit of adventure and get them away from the city and away from just wandering around and being at risk and getting in trouble. We wanted to get them, out of that whole mindset.
That's very helpful.
I think
And
so.
as an outdoor educator, then, you are certified by this nonprofit, National Outdoor Leadership School. What's involved in earning this certification?
Well, I took the Knowles course while I was still working for the county. And I actually rode a motorcycle out there to take it. It was in Wyoming.
Okay.
It was a 4-week course in the mountains.
Wow.
And we had classes in the mountains, and we Learned everything from how to, create an excursion, an outdoor expedition, first aid, safety, rope management, cooking. We learned all that so that we could go back and safely and professionally take young people or kids into the outdoors and make sure that they had a good experience and were safe and comfortable and would come back wanting to try to do more. So that Knowles experience was a very valuable part of my educational experience growing up, and it fit right in with working with the Smith Center as well.
So when you got that certification, you had to be tested on certain skills while being outdoors?
You were evaluated by the trip leaders.
Okay.
They would evaluate your trip management, your group management, leadership skills. They would, map reading. You had to there was no trails.
Okay.
So when we were up in the Wind River Mountains, we were basically bushwhacking with 100-pound packs on our back, and so we were evaluated on just the ability to concentrate and focus on what was necessary to make sure you had a safe day and a comfortable day, and learn while you were out there. Plus, you learned about the mountain ecology, and you learned about how different kinds of people react to under stresses, both physical and emotional, being in the wilderness. And it was a really good experience to be able to pass on to working with kids in a different kind of wilderness, where their wilderness is youth and trying to grow and manage the social problems of school.
That's very deep and very good to have, I guess, nature to help you navigate.
Well, it's always been a good guidepost for me anyway.
Very good. So then teaching environmental outdoor ed, it requires, special training, it requires certifications, but what about your natural inclinations or personalities? What would you say would be helpful?
I think individuals that want to do any kind of outdoor work need to be adaptable. They need to be comfortable in the outdoors. They need to learn and learn from others who have wisdom, older folks that or more experienced folks that have been outdoors. And they need to learn about what their limits are, and make sure that they're trying to do activities in the outdoors, be it an adventure sport or environmental education or outdoor education, that that they can pass on that information and the passion of being outdoors, as well as make sure it's comfortable and something that people will grow from. So I think you need to be an individual that loves being out there and is willing to take on some of the difficulties that different climates or stressors or groups or individuals in the groups will bring to it.
So for yourself then, how did you get more and more comfortable outdoors? Was it from childhood?
No.
Okay.
Oh no, I did not grow up comfortable in the outdoors. I grew up with a sickly, skinny little kid, not just an old kid.
So then where did you get your comfort and passion for the outdoors?
I don't know. I just, my family took some trips. We took one trip out to Arizona, a long car ride, and it was my first time seeing the West. And when I saw the West, I kind of fell in love with it. And I always wanted to go back, and so I would take trips back to the West, and then I'd bring that love of being the outdoors, where I would take trips out. I rode motorcycles. So from the time I was 18 until I got married and had to give them away, I rode motorcycles. I rode cross country on a motorcycle 4 times. Wow. And I would just camp out and ride and hike, and then I'd come home and work and take the kids that I worked with or friends and go do more outdoor adventures and go caving. We would do a lot of caving and climbing and hiking and camping. And I still, at this point, was not a boater, was not a kayaker. So I just kind of normalized myself in the outdoors and just felt more comfortable.
That's very nice. And certainly we also mentioned that you worked for a long time with Whitman High School with the program coordinator for special ed program. That was your role. How does that Whitman program relate to the outdoor ed
That's a really good question. It really, I think that I got into special education working with at-risk kids and their families, just kids who have a lot of challenges going on in their life, and things are difficult for them and for their families, and so they would have difficulties within school navigating the social and educational needs that they had. And I fell into doing some outward bound kind of programming for these kids in the school. And eventually I started to work more as a counselor, as a coordinator of a program within Walt Whitman High School called a satellite. It was a satellite of a program for kids that were at risk. So that kind of ended taking kids out of doors. We did some trips with them out of doors, but that began my kayaking career because Whitman is very close to the Potomac River. And so I started to kayak every day after school to blow off some of that emotional steam and to get back outside. Kayaking became a way to be fit, to get some exercise. The Potomac River is actually, we consider it the Aspen of whitewater. The best whitewater in the world is right here in the Potomac River, right here in Montgomery County.
Very lucky for us to be here.
We're very fortunate, and so for me it was too. So I could get exercise, I could be out of doors, and I could blow off some of that emotional stress that built up from dealing with, individuals that came to school with a great deal of trouble. And so I just kept building kayaking skills because that's what I did every day to, kind of transition from being a special ed teacher to being a father and having a family. I needed a break in between to do something to get my mind away from that. That's where kayaking came in.
I'm very excited to hear more. I'm sure we will discuss more about the kayaking part. And but first, then we will also focus now on the duties of the special education role that you had within the program. What do you think within the special education program? How, as you oversaw the program, how did you go about framing it or developing it over the years?
That's a really good question again. Again, I had a staff, an excellent staff. I really missed them. I did not like retiring and leaving the staff that we worked with. We were an excellent team, and I think the bottom line, we always cared about the kids. It wasn't their behavior. We saw the young person and the needs that they had and trying to help them navigate the many different difficulties that they had. And I think that was, when you think about that, that's kind of what you do when you go out of doors. You're navigating your way through the wilderness or through the woods or down a river, and you're trying to find your way through this tangle of things that are, for some people foreign. And for these kids, some of these obstacles are foreign. And I think we did the same thing as a staff at Whitman. And I think that's what we tried to do, was we were always forgiving, understanding. At the same time, we had to hold a boundary, a limit for what the behaviors would be acceptable, because we knew that at some point they were going to have to go into the community, and the community may not be as forgiving. And so we were trying to balance that forgiveness and understanding and tolerance that we might have in a school system with the need to be able to maintain yourself in a respectful manner in the community. And at the same time, to create a life for yourself. We want these kids to create a life. So they have a path that they're trying to go on, and we would try to help guide them on the path. And I think that's what we all tried to do. And as the coordinator of the program, I hope that I was, somewhat successful in helping our staff do the same, help them find a way on their path.
That's wonderful. It sounds like you were definitely helping them, being both forgiving, patient, but also firm when needed, so then they could fly on their own.
Balance.
No.
Not an easy balance.
Not even for anyone.
Correct.
So.
Yeah.
So thank you. So right now it is time to take a break, but stay with us. We will be right back, and we will be speaking more with Mr. Mornini.
You can sit with me, imagine what you'd see if every child had a book to read.
So the mission is for us to get a book to each and every child. So let's join hands, book people unite.
Unearth hidden passion.
Come on, we'll have a good time. One book could be the first little thing that helps to change a life. Book people unite.
Read to a child today and spark a lifetime of ambition.
Up, college is hard. Down, those books are heavy.
My sport is football, but my passion is education.
Right up here.
So every year, I take promising high schoolers on a college tour
Lights there, darks there.
to show them that higher education means a brighter future. My name is Nnamdi Asamoah. I don't just wear the shirt, I live it.
You can be a reader, tutor, or mentor too. Take the pledge at liveunited.org/volunteer.
Do you wear this?
Nice.
Oh!
Yes, go! Yes!
Ropes? Yeah, sure. Let's go.
Moms everywhere are finding ways to keep kids active and healthy.
Works every time.
Get ideas, get involved, get going at letsmove.gov.
Packers. Viking. Packers. Viking. Viking.
Red state. Blue state. Vegan.
Carnivore. We come from different places.
Uptown. Downtown.
Optimist. We come to different conclusions.
Half empty.
Half full.
But when we live united, we create real, lasting change in the building blocks of life. The education, income, and health of our communities, our families,
United.
even the person next to us.
Live united.
Real change won't happen without you. So give, advocate, volunteer, live united. Sign up at liveunited.org.
Welcome back to Career Choices. In today's program, we've invited Mr. Joe Mornini to talk about his career. So, in 2004, you co-founded a nonprofit organization, Team River Runner. Why did you start it?
A friend of mine, Mike McCormick, and I were out paddling every day after work, just like I'd been doing for many, many years. And Mike had a job that took him to Walter Reed, which is where all of the wounded at the time came back to, and it was in Washington, D.C. at that time. The Walter Reed was in Washington, D.C. Now it's in Bethesda. And he was talking about many of the wounded veterans that were coming back, wounded soldiers or Marines or whoever, and they were missing limbs and they were in wheelchairs. And so we began our first program trying to take them out of a wheelchair and put them in a kayak. And so we wrote up a program. My wife helped name it, Team River Runner. And we took some kayaks down to Walter Reed. It's a long story, but we lucked out and found just the right person to let us in the door.
Nice.
And we started doing kayaking with them. And it wasn't long before some of the individuals there that were receiving services for issues from the war that were not amputees. They had post-traumatic stress, they had traumatic brain injury, they had cancer. They asked if they could play too, and we said, sure. So our original program was to be a lifestyle paddling program to get them into a lifestyle of paddling. It soon became very inclusive, so we have never turned anybody away from taking part in our program. So that's how we started it.
That's really good. When you say your program, can you describe some of the activities the veterans are engaging in?
We kayak. Well, we paddle sports. So
Okay.
any kind of paddle sports is in bounds with us. We don't. So we use stand-up paddle boards. We have some canoes that people would prefer to paddle. Mostly kayak, because kayaks are small and you can move them around. You can put them in a trailer, and they fit in a pool. So at Walter Reed, the original program, and it still is that way. We started teaching kayaking in a pool in Walter Reed, and that was on a Tuesday night at 5 o'clock. And we've been going to Walter Reed every Tuesday at 5 o'clock for 14 years now. I was just there tonight at 5 o'clock. So we've had an unbroken string. If the pool's open and there's, the snow's not so deep, we have boats in the pool. So you can kayak year-round.
Nice.
And I think that's one of the things we discovered is that kayaking is a therapeutic adventure sport that you can do. An adventure could be anything from just paddling around in a pool to going out and running a big river or a lake or a pond. So that's kind of how it got started. We just kind of kept learning our way and finding different types of programs that we could do with kayaking. So we have a lot of different kinds of kayaking fun programs that we do.
So since 2004, how many can you estimate how many veterans have gone through your programs?
Right now our numbers, and this is kind of this is lowball, being very conservative. We feel that we've worked with more than 10,000 unique and individual veterans in the 14 years in our program. We started at Walter Reed in that pool, and now we're in 31 states. We have 65 chapters, and we have numerous different types of paddling programs that give the veterans that participate with us the opportunity to take on leadership and purpose and to help other veterans or other individuals in the community that are disabled.
So when you're running this program and it's growing, what are some important skills or training that has helped you accomplish this nonprofit organization type?
Well, we really want people to volunteer because their passion is to help others. So we're looking for individuals that have time on their hands and want to give back. I think General Doolittle said it, that the heart of America is its volunteers. And we really show that in Team of Runner. All of our chapters are volunteer coordinated. And many of those volunteers are veterans themselves who have served in various capacities over many, many, many years. And they want to give back to other veterans, and they want to give back to their community. And so we're looking for people that want to give back, that are patient,
yes,
that have some ability to either develop the skill of paddling. If they don't have it, we'll teach them, has some interest in that, and are willing to be flexible. They need to be flexible and understanding that, you know, it's not always going to be a smooth ride. Nonprofits are not easy. Finding veterans to participate is not easy because we're not basketball and football and baseball. We're kayaking, and people are like, well, that's something that you kind of do on the weekend when you go rent a boat for an hour, and that's not what we do.
So that's where I'm very interested in this next part. So I know you went to the Grand Canyon with some of your veterans. So we have some wonderful photos. If you'd like to take us there with us.
Sure.
That would be wonderful to see what's going on here. It's beautiful.
Well, we're in the canyon. So this Grand Canyon trip was an opportunity for us to show how veterans, blind veterans and wounded or disabled veterans and other veterans that have no disability that volunteer can come together as a team and paddle the Grand Canyon. So we had 5 blind veterans. 4 were wounded by war, our war veterans. One was wounded by a hunting accident, was shot in the face, but had served on a submarine and had been in some very interesting situations underwater in a submarine that were terrifying for me to think about, but for him was just his job. So there we are kayaking. We kayaked in pods. Each blind veteran had 3 sighted veteran guides. One was a guide. Right behind would be a safety boater, and then behind that would be a sweep. And so we each alternated that role, either guiding through the rapids or safety boating them or being a sweep and keeping them in their boat. So we trained them over a year in many, we called this the Vision Team. These 5 blind veterans were the Vision Team. That's us walking up to a Native American site, an archaeological site that is up in a hill above the canyon. The individual that was walking there is Brian, that guy there.
On the left?
On the right.
On the right?
On the left is Lonnie. Lion is arguably, was the first blind kayaker to run the entire length of the Grand Canyon.
Wow.
And this is his 4th trip down the Grand Canyon. And this trip was his dream, to run the Grand Canyon and take 4 other veterans that he knew. That's another picture of us looking at that hike that we took with Brian, who was a blind veteran who also lost his leg. And we had to guide him up this kind of steep and difficult trail up above the river. Up above those rafts. Those were our rafts from the company. We went with a company called Azra. They carried all of our gear and food. And they also were a place that the veterans, the blind veterans, could go and sit on if they were exhausted for the day, because we were on that canyon for 12 days, 226 miles of whitewater. We camped out in the desert. Each pod was responsible for making sure a tent was put up for each blind veteran. And then we all had camp chores that we did, and we just slept out under the stars. We saw the Milky Way every night. It was awesome.
That is awesome.
We did not wish to leave.
Kudos to the photographer. Those were some amazing photos.
The photographer is an Iraq veteran, a wonderful kayaker, a good friend. Came back and started a company doing video work.
Nice.
And he goes on a lot of our trips with us, and he's just a wonderful young man, Seth Dahl. Again, the idea of this trip was to show that there's no limit. There's no boundary. No matter what your disability is, we can put you in a boat. And other veterans can help you with that. So if you're blind, there's always going to be a sighted veteran or a volunteer that's going to help you get out down to the river. At the end of the day, what we would like to see in this country is that wherever you go and you see a kayak, you always see a wheelchair, and you always see someone walking down to the river with a cane with their family or a friend going boating. That's our hope.
That's really awesome. So very quickly for our audience, in the last few moments, what advice would you give them if they are now inspired to take a career in outdoor ed?
I'd say volunteer with another program. Go out and spend some time out with an organization that goes out of doors, or go volunteer with anybody. Give your time, because it's about connections. It's about who you meet, and it's about creating a passion in your life to do something, to do something larger than yourself, bigger than yourself. And I think that the opportunities are out there. Certainly there's a need for us to try to heal and help heal others. And so get out and find a path that you can get on. There's certainly a lot of volunteer opportunities here in Montgomery County. You can come work with us, help us find other individuals, veterans and individuals who are disabled to work with us, and we'd love to have you in a boat with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Mornini, thank you so much for sharing everything from your special ed to your outdoor ed program. And now, this concludes our program. Thanks to our guest, Mr. Joe Mornini, for sharing his career, journey, and accomplishments, and thank you for joining us. I hope Mr. Mornini's stories inspire you to explore different career choices that bring a positive impact to our community. And if you have any feedback or comments, or if you would like to share your experience, please email us at qip.career.choices@gmail.com. And we'll see you next time on Career Choices.